You are not the same person you were 7 years ago, not metaphorically, physically. The atoms in your body are in a constant state of replacement. The cells in your gut lining are replaced every few days. Your red blood cells last about 4 months. The calcium in your bones is renewed over roughly a decade. Even neurons, long assumed to be permanent, exchange their molecular components continuously, even when the cells themselves remain. This means that most of the atoms currently forming your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self, were not there 10 years ago. They arrived as food, as water, as air. They stayed for a while. They left. Others took their place. Death, it turns out, is not where this process begins. It's where it stops being organized. I came across this while looking into the physics of identity, specifically the question of what stays constant when the physical material is always changing. I expected a clear answer. I didn't find one, so I went deeper. In 1955, the physicist Richard Feynman gave a lecture called The Value of Science. He was trying to explain what scientific knowledge actually feels like from the inside, why it matters, why it's strange, why it should inspire something more than indifference. He offered an example. A scientific paper, he said, might report something like this: the radioactive phosphorus content of the cerebrum of the rat decreases to 1/2 in a period of 2 weeks. Most people would read that and keep moving. Feynman stopped. What that sentence actually says is this: the phosphorus in a rat's brain, and in his brain and in yours, is not the same phosphorus it was 2 weeks ago. The atoms are being replaced. The old ones have gone somewhere else. New ones have arrived from somewhere else. So what is this mind of ours? Feynman wrote. What are these atoms with consciousness? Last week's potatoes. They now can remember what was going on in my mind a year ago. A mind which has long ago been replaced. Last week's potatoes. The atoms currently forming your thoughts were, not long ago, part of something else entirely. They arrived as food or water or air. They were incorporated into proteins, into cell membranes, into the electrochemical machinery of thought, and they will leave. They are already leaving. This is not a metaphor. It is physics, and it changes what death means. Here is the first law of thermodynamics. Restated simply, matter is not created or destroyed. It changes form, changes arrangement, changes location. It does not disappear. Your body is made of roughly 7 octillion atoms, 7 followed by 27 zeros. Most of them are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. When you die, none of them are destroyed. The process that kept them organized, metabolism, cellular repair, the electrochemical gradients that maintain living cells, stops. But the atoms remain. What happens next is chemistry. Within hours of death, a process called autolysis begins. Without oxygen, cells can no longer produce ATP, the molecular fuel that powers every cellular function. Without ATP, the pumps that maintain ion gradients across cell membranes fail. Enzymes that were sealed in cellular compartments are released. They begin digesting surrounding tissue. The body begins to break itself down. This is followed by putrefaction, the work of bacteria, most of which were already living in the gut during life. They spread through the body, breaking complex molecules into simpler ones. Carbon atoms leave as carbon dioxide. Nitrogen compounds convert to ammonia, then to nitrates in the soil. Water is released. Fats break into fatty acids. Then the fungi arrive. Fungi are among the most efficient decomposers on Earth. Their thread-like hyphae penetrate organic matter and secrete enzymes that break down cellulose, lignin, and protein into forms that smaller organisms can absorb. They are not scavengers in the way we typically imagine. They are chemical disassemblers, methodically returning complex biological structures to their elemental components. Without fungi, dead organic matter would accumulate faster than it could be recycled. They are, in a very real sense, the mechanism by which the dead feed the living. The carbon cycle begins almost immediately. Carbon that leaves the body as carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere, where it may travel thousands of miles before being absorbed by a plant during photosynthesis. That plant fixes the carbon into glucose, into cellulose, into the structural tissues of leaves and roots. An animal eats the plant. The carbon passes on. It may cycle through dozens of organisms over decades before returning to the atmosphere again. The nitrogen cycle is slower, but equally precise. Nitrogen compounds from the decomposing body are converted by soil bacteria, first into ammonia, then into nitrites, then into nitrates. In this form, nitrogen becomes bioavailable. Plant roots absorb it and use it to build proteins and DNA. The nitrogen that was once in your muscles may, within a few years, be in the proteins of a plant, then in the body of an insect, then in the gut of a bird. The calcium and phosphorus in your bones take longer. Bone is dense and mineralized, and it resists decomposition for years, sometimes decades, but it too eventually dissolves, leached by acidic groundwater, absorbed by plant roots, recycled through the soil food web. The calcium that held your skeleton together may one day hold up a tree. Within months to years, depending on conditions, the atoms that formed a human body are fully distributed into the surrounding environment. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. The body dissolves back into the world it was temporarily assembled from. Now set the chemistry aside for a moment. Richard Feynman died on February 15, 1988, at the age of 69. More than 30 years earlier, he had stood in front of an audience explaining something most people never think about. The atoms inside us are only temporary visitors. He used phosphorus as his example. The phosphorus in your brain today, he said, is not the phosphorus that was there 2 weeks ago. Matter flows continuously through living things. When Feynman died, the same process he had spent his career explaining simply continued without him. The pattern that made him Richard Feynman stopped maintaining itself. The atoms did not. The phosphorus that carried his thoughts in 1988 is somewhere else now. So is the carbon that formed his hands. So is the oxygen that once passed through his lungs. He understood this long before it happened, and then it happened exactly as the physics predicted. This is where the science becomes genuinely uncomfortable. If the atoms in your body are continuously replaced during life, and they are, then the you of 10 years ago shared no physical material with the you of today. What persisted was not the atoms. It was the pattern, the arrangement, the particular configuration of matter that maintains itself through the constant flow of incoming and outgoing particles. Death is the point at which the pattern stops maintaining itself. The atoms continue. The organization does not. This raises a question that physics can frame but cannot answer. If you are not your atoms, since those are replaced continuously during life, then what exactly was it that was alive? And if the pattern is what mattered, not the material, then what does it mean for that pattern to end? Philosophers call this the ship of Theseus problem, applied to biology. If every plank of a ship is gradually replaced, is it the same ship? If every atom in a body is gradually replaced, is it the same person? Neuroscience adds another layer. The memories you carry, the personality that feels continuous, the sense that there is a consistent you moving through time. These are produced by patterns of neural activity, not by specific atoms. The neurons that hold your earliest memories are not made of the same matter they were made of when those memories formed. The atoms changed. The pattern held, for a while. The physics is settled. The matter is conserved. The atoms disperse and recombine. Nothing is lost in any physical sense. Whether something else is lost, whether the pattern, the arrangement, the configuration of atoms that constituted a person amounts to something that matters beyond physics. That is a question the equation does not answer. The phosphorus in your brain right now is not the phosphorus that was there 2 weeks ago. The carbon in your hand will one day become part of the soil, the air, a leaf, an animal, another living system entirely. Richard Feynman's atoms are already out there, scattered across the world. Yours will be too. Physics is remarkably clear about that. What it cannot tell us is whether we were ever the atoms in the first place, or whether we were only ever the pattern they happened to form for a little while.